Okay, welcome to Raccoon Rambles. We're gonna go feed some raccoons. I got some blueberries lined up for them to hopefully teach some of the babies. It's gonna be their first time eating blueberries tonight. We're also gonna be talking about some very motivating and inspiring topics as we hang out with the raccoons. For those of you who don't know, my name is Brendan and I post a lot of nature videos, but I also work as a mental toughness coach. So we're gonna be blending both of those tonight. Let's see who's outside waiting for us. Okay, it's time for some Raccoon Rambles. How do you feel about that? You ready to get this party started? So this is going to be all about adaptability, which is one of the chief virtues of the raccoon. They're one of the most adaptable creatures. They can survive in so many different environments because they're so good at problem solving. You know, we learn many different skills in our human education. I know I spent like 12 years learning math, but you know, all we need is a calculator and I get by just fine. I learned about going to school here in Canada. I spent about 12 years learning French and I only remember like cow and duck and I forget which one's which. So we learn a whole bunch of different subjects, history and everything else. But I think the one thing we don't learn properly is how to overcome adversity in life. And it's probably one of those skills that's going to give us the greatest return on investment. Because think about it this way, do problems in life ever really stop? No, like you solve one problem and another problem shows up in your life. So getting good at solving the problems in your life is probably one of the top skills. And I'm going to share with you a tool that I've used to win some really good prizes, and I have a story about this later that you definitely want to hear. And I've also used this tool to help coach pro and elite athletes, even help people win a gold medal at the Olympics using this tool. So it's called Game Changer. And here's the way it works. When a problem in life shows up, we ask ourselves 3 questions about that problem in order to go from pain to power. The 3 questions are, number 1, what's good about this? When you ask yourself what's good about this, it presupposes that there's good in everything. It increases gratitude for our life experiences instead of resentment. And when we ask ourselves what's good about this, it calms us down so that we're in a more creative state to problem solve. So we start off with what's good about this and rep it out to fatigue. You don't just answer once and move on. That's like taking a weight in the gym, lifting it one time and moving on when you could have lifted way more reps. You want to get to those growth reps. So you do as many as you can for what's good about this. The second question is what can be learned? You know, you might consider that all these problems and difficulties we face are just learning opportunities. And when we develop the wisdom from our life problems, it gives us immunity against that type of problem in future. And the third question is, how can I make it better? Now, this helps us get out of problem-focused thinking, where people just keep ruminating and thinking over and over again in circles about the problem. And it gets us into solution-based thinking. And the best way to come up with a good idea is to come up with as many ideas as you can. Nothing succeeds like excess when it comes to this department. So those 3 questions are, what's good about this? What can be learned? How can you make it better? You might start out feeling really stressed about a situation, but you filter it through those 3 questions and the results are powerful. And the power is in the simplicity of it. It's just 3 little questions. The power is in the repeatability. You can use this for any and all problems in life. Now, some of them might be a little too heavy for you to answer right now, but as you build up your strength, you'll be able to move through them with those 3 questions. And the power is in the results. I've had people that were 10 out of 10 stressed about something, and we have a conversation where we just go back and forth. What's good about this? What can be learned? How can you make it better? And they've turned it into a 0 because they saw the benefits and the opportunities, even though it was uncomfortable. So let's go through a practical situation here. Imagine you're in school and you get matched up with the quote-unquote lazy kid in class. Now you're stressed out because you think, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to do all the work. They're not gonna contribute. This is unfair. First of all, in the chat, let me know if you have ever been in this situation where you got matched up in a group project with somebody who seemed really unmotivated to succeed. And if you don't remember ever being in that situation, maybe you were always the lazy one in those situations. I'm kidding. We want to start off with 1 to 10, how much would this stress you out if you really care about your school marks? You know, this person's probably not going to do anything and they're going to get a good mark if you put in all the work. And they might bring you down. So let's say you scored a 7 out of 10. Now we're going to go into brainstorming what's good about this. Throw your ideas into the chat. What's good about this? We're in a group project in school. We got matched up with the lazy person. Number 1, we might think, well, now I have creative freedom to do the project the way I want to do it. Because if I'm doing most of the work, I decide what we're focusing on. Number 2 is, you know, it's probably always helpful to get a lazy person's perspective on anything, because lazy people are really good at finding the most efficient ways of doing things and saving energy. In fact, when it comes to product design, sometimes they bring in focus groups of lazy people to interact with a product just to learn more. And there was one story I remember reading about where they brought in a bunch of lazy people and they said, okay, we're going to do a study with you, but before we do, you go into that room and you help yourself to some ice cream. Now, the room with the ice cream was where the real research was happening. They were watching through one of those 2-way mirrors where, you know, you don't know you're being watched. And they had a new ice cream scoop and they wanted to see how these people would use it. And they found that all the people they identified as being lazier, they all licked the spoon and then put it back, you know? And the researchers thought, oh my goodness, they're all licking the spoon. This is one of their secret things they do. Why don't we change the product and invent a lickable ice cream scoop? So this ice cream scoop was not very good at scooping ice cream, but it was lickable. So it was a good shape for licking, and it was a great commercial success because all these people were like, this is my secret hidden pleasure. I like to lick the scoop, so I'm going to buy this one. I don't care what scoops ice cream better. So it may have value to get a lazy person's perspective on anything. The other thing is, if we have to do more of the work, we develop more experience and we level up our skills, right? With more experience, we get more skills. I know it's not comfortable when you have to do more of the work, but we're in it for the long game. Also, how many people said this or thought this could be the beginning of a new friendship? It's true, because I was in a situation like this, and I'll tell you more about that later. Then we go into what can be learned. Well, what can be learned about this situation? Maybe they're not really lazy. Did you ever think about that? I don't actually think anybody is lazy. I think there's just lazy states of being we get into, because if the building's on fire, everybody hustles to get out. So, what's shutting them down might be something we want to learn. Have you ever heard of a creativity scar? A creativity scar is basically one time you expressed yourself creatively, and maybe you got embarrassed and humiliated when you did it. Perhaps it was you were asked to make up a dance and people laughed at you, or you drew a picture of a dog and people laughed at you and said it looked like it was a horse. And so the memory of the shame and the humiliation may draw you to hold back, which might be perceived as lazy. But really it's not. So we might also want to learn about what motivates this individual. I might ask them to just, hey, help me understand you better. Why don't you tell me about some past successes you've had, or times you've gone from struggle to success? We'll do I go, you go. I go one, you go one. Tell me why it was hard and what were all your success ingredients. What did you think or do in order to succeed in these situations? This is important because if I can learn what their success ingredients were, I can try to set it up to put those ingredients in play for this situation. So, if they always thought, oh, I want to prove all the doubters wrong, I'll make this like, hey, on this project, let's prove all the doubters wrong, because all these people, they think you're the lazy person, And then we might get into how can we make it better? Well, how can we make it better? One, we can build up their belief in themselves. We can, apply some good leadership skills. We can make it better by being practical in our idealism. So, realistically, if they're not going to do much work, maybe we can get them to at least get us the coffee while we're doing all the work or something like that. Now, my wife was in a group project. Ashley was in a group project, and she said to me, I'm partnered up with 2 people, and I don't think they're very motivated to do their share of the work. What do you think I should do? And I said to her, okay, assume they do nothing. How long would it take you to do all of their work? 2 days nonstop. I said, okay, give them a hard deadline at 2 days out. And at that deadline, don't listen to any excuses they give that they're going to give it to you. You get the work done. They all said, oh, it's coming, it's coming. It never came. They both dropped out. Left her high and dry. She did all the work. She got a good mark on it too. The prof realized what happened. So she gave herself a buffer. That's called prudence, preparing for what could go wrong. Now, not to judge these people, what they were going through, maybe some personal issues or something. Point is, be prepared to do their work if they don't. Be a friend to all. So I was once in a group project, and my partner made it very clear he was unmotivated to do work. And I said, okay, well, why don't I do all the rough work? I put it together and you just have to type it up in good. And he said, okay. Anyways, he ended up taking all my rough work, not even stapling it, and he just flopped it on the teacher's desk, and I got a horrible mark and he dropped out. So he did nothing. He just handed it in. And the teacher shamed me in front of the whole class because he took it as a personal insult. He didn't know the full story. And wouldn't you know it, 8 years later, that guy who was my partner, who left me high and dry, 8 years later, I was the best man at his wedding. True story. He was going through a hard time. He was going through a breakup. He switched schools, got his life back together. We were connected a few years later. It was all good. We don't want to judge people on their actions because we don't know the full story. But, you never know. This could be a friend. So anyways, true or false? Lazy people are educational experiences that can bring out our higher potential, our ability to lead and motivate, our creativity and resourcefulness, our patience, our humility. Lazy people are educational experiences that bring out our higher potential. Now, if I score it 1 to 10, what do I think? I think, okay, well, it's going to be uncomfortable, but it's going to be good for me. So I give it a 0 because it's like having a workout at the gym. It might burn and be uncomfortable, but it's good for me in the long term. Guys, blueberries. Blueberries for everybody. Blueberries for everybody. These aren't even... I was working with somebody and he's like, okay, you can't use that for everything though. It doesn't work for every problem. And I said, no way. Give me the most intense problem you can and let's go through it together. So he says, okay, I want you to imagine you're on a rocket ship going to Mars. And you just found out you got 5 minutes before you run out of air and you die. So we got 5 minutes till we die. Okay? What's good about this? In order to be on a rocket ship to Mars, I must have done something right in my life. Not just everybody gets that opportunity. So this is actually like a really good thing. Number two is we're gonna all die somehow anyway. Why not die in this fantastic way? Going on a rocket ship to Mars. You know, what else is good about this? Other people in future are gonna learn what went wrong on this rocket ship, and they're gonna make improvements with rocket ships in the future. So my death, which is inevitable, will ultimately be a sacrifice that will save who knows how many lives in future. Right? What can be learned? Well, I can learn what's the most important thing to do in that last 5 minutes. Maybe I have time to reach out, let my family know I love them and everything else. A final message. I can write a note. You know, a lot of people don't have the benefit of knowing when they're going to die. It just happens suddenly. They didn't have time to prepare. At least I got 5 minutes. You know, how can I make it better? Well, I can just focus on appreciating the transition I'm about to experience. Look, traveling to Mars might seem exciting. It's another planet. Traveling to the afterlife? Oh my gosh. There's so much more adventure in that. When I'm disembodied, like, you know, I'm still in this body vehicle when I go to Mars, and Mars is pretty desolate for the most part. Baby. And I could focus on that, and I could focus on just keeping my inner peace. And just letting God know, you know what, my life is in your hands. If you want me to live, you got to do something. But if you don't, then I trust this is for the best. I could use this as a test of faith and be like, God, you got this. You and I will handle this, whatever it is. You know, we went back and forth. I go, you go. I go, you go. Rocket ship to Mars. We're going to die. And at the end, he's like, you're right. Since we're all going to die anyway, this is actually a cool way to die. He's like, you're right. You can use this for anything. Hello. So for her 30th birthday, I took my wife Ashley on a Mediterranean cruise. Okay, now we don't drink anymore. Back then we did, and so we went to wine tasting on the last day at sea. We went to a wine tasting event. And we show up, and we're the only two to show up for wine tasting. And the person running the event says, I'm sorry, we need 6 people to run the event, so the event is canceled. And we're like, what? Really? So we sit there and we do I go, you go, I go, you go. What's good about this? What can be learned? How can you make it better? So we go through the schedule. We figure out what other events are being run right now. We determine martini tasting is also going on right now. Maybe this will open us up to learning something new and maybe finding a new favorite drink. I've never really got into martinis before, but who knows? I could be like, this is my new favorite drink, and I didn't even know it till I was pretty much had no choice but to go. So we go to the martini tasting, and we're the only people to show up for that as well. So that event gets canceled. And we look at each other and we're like, okay, what's good about this? What can be learned? How can I make it better? And at this point, we have more options. We're like, well, we could complain and maybe get some credits or something, ship credits or something, but we're not really complaining people. We're trying to go with the flow of what's trying to happen in life, and I feel like complaining is resisting the grand plan of everything that's going on. Then we're like, well, we can figure out what other events are going on right now. There's only one other event, and it's bingo. Now, I don't really like bingo. I don't like gambling. But I figure, okay, let's go. So we show up at bingo, and literally everybody's there, because there's a lot of older folks on this ship. You know, we're some of the youngest people on this thing. and people are like standing room only, but there's a couple empty chairs front center because it's like really in the awkward spot. So we have to sit in the front center. Anyway, we sit down in front, and I tell Ashley, I said, look, you play bingo and I'm going to get some computer work done. So I open up my laptop, and the MC comes over and she's like, sir, I'm sorry, we're going to have to ask you to close that because it's going to be distraction for everyone playing bingo. So I was like, okay, what's good about this? What can be learned? How can I make it better? Now I'm forced to watch bingo. And at this point, a little kid starts running and body checking the back of my chair. And I'm being like thrust forward like this, okay? And so they're like, okay, it's the last chance to come up for bingo. And I'm literally being tossed up. So I'm like, okay, I'm in, I'll go up for bingo. So the bingo is going, and then they bring out this big golden tumbler full of tickets. All week long on the cruise, every time you got bingo cards, you got a ticket for this grand prize, and they put all the tickets into this big tumbler. They pick one person in the crowd to pick the winning ticket, and they pick the kid that kept body checking my chair. So I said, that's it. There are no accidents in the universe, according to Master Oogway, the turtle on Kung Fu Panda. Everything had to happen, all the events getting canceled. It all makes sense. That kid is going to pick my ticket because they're drawn to my energy. And so I hand Ashley my phone, and I say, Ashley, film this because I'm going to win right now. And Ashley filmed it, and sure enough, I won us a free cruise. True story. Right then and there, using what's good, what can be learned, how can I make it better? The story doesn't stop there though. So after winning us this cruise, we now have to fly back home. The cruise is over. And we only have an hour between connecting flights in Ireland. And our first flight was an hour late. So we land in Dublin, and I tell Ashley, we gotta hustle to get our connecting flight. I don't know if you've ever been on an airplane when the people in front of you are taking forever to get their stuff out of the overhead compartments, and we were at the back of the plane, and I was like, oh, come on, like we really gotta go, right? So eventually we get there, we sprint down to the end, the plane takes off. This plane left right on time, even though ours was an hour late. Same airline. So we decide, okay, what do we do now? What's good? What can be learned? How can I make it better? We get in line to speak to the airline representative. Now, at this point, there's about 8 other people that were also meant to get on that connecting flight. And they're ahead of us. And they are all giving this lady an earful. They are just yelling at her. They're very frustrated that the airline was an hour late for our flight, but didn't wait for us at the connection. And so when we're doing what's good about this, what can be learned, how can we make it better, we came to the conclusion that it's not about us right now. There's something more important going on. There's an innocent person being persecuted. So I said, we're going to make it better by doing the right thing, which is making her feel good. And then whatever happens, happens. So we get up there after she's been yelled at by all these people, and I say to her, first of all, I am so sorry you had to go through all of that. You deserved none of that. Furthermore, I want you to know that you matter, because in your job, in your own way, when you smile like that and you spread joy, it's contagious, and other people take your joy that you've given to them and they spread it all over the world. And unfortunately, some people don't have the skill to appreciate your value, but we do. And we're grateful for you, and we're sorry you had to go through all that. Anyway, I went on a little bit more than that. I decided to give like this almost like TED Talk, motivational talk to this lady. And she was like, oh my gosh, I so needed to hear that right now. And then she explains to us that The airline is going to put us in a hotel for the night. They're going to fly us out to Chicago in the morning. We have to spend the day at the airport. We fly back to Toronto later on that night. And I said to her, well, is that our best option? And she said, no, because you've been so nice, I'm going to write down that you're not allowed in the USA. And the airline is going to put you up in a hotel for 2 nights, pay for all your meals. You take a direct flight back to Toronto at the end of the weekend, enjoy a vacation in Dublin. Just like that, we're like, what? Are you kidding? We just won a cruise. Now we got a vacation in Dublin. You know, all through using these 3 questions. We go around Dublin, we're touring a whole bunch of the different sites. We decide that one of the main things we wanted to do was go to this bar restaurant that's got a little Celtic show. It's called Johnny Fox's. It's right up on the mountain, the biggest mountain in Ireland. It's like over 100 years old, this bar. And we decided, well, my brother's name is Johnny Fox, so maybe it's a sign. Let's sign up for that. So we booked the tickets. And they let us know that just make sure that you are outside this one particular hotel at 6:30 because there's only one bus that goes up the mountain, so make sure you're not late. Okay? So we spend our day in Dublin. We go to like the Guinness Brewery. We go to the Leprechaun Museum. I don't recommend the Leprechaun Museum, by the way. It's kind of creepy. And just before 6 p.m., we go to a cafe that's right beside the hotel to have some tea. We finish our teas. It's about 6:15. I say to my wife, okay, we're done our tea. Do you want to go out there and we can get ready and wait? And she's like, no. I want to sit here. It's too early. 6:20. I'm like, okay, do you want to go out and wait right now? We'll be 10 minutes early. And she's like, no, don't rush me. Like, let's wait. So we wait till about 6:25 and then we go out there. We're waiting for this bus that's going up the mountain. We're waiting and waiting. It never shows up. We go inside to the hotel. We explain the situation. And they're like, oh, yes. The bus going up to Johnny Fox's already came and left. It was here just after 6:20. And we're like, what? So it was one of those really pivotal moments when you have a spouse and you're looking at them and you could say, I told you so. But instead of, we all make mistakes, and I'm a big fan that whenever there's problems in a relationship, it's both of us against the problem. It's not who caused it or started it. So instead of, she kind of looked at me like, uh-oh, like we should have gone when you said. But instead I looked at her and I said, what's good about this? What can be learned? How can we make it better? The hotel is able to call up the bus driver. He refuses to turn around. He's like, no, we can't turn around. We're on a tight timeline. Eventually we get on the call with the manager at Johnny Fox's. We say, hey, look, you guys told us 6:30. This bus came early and left without us. He apologizes. He explains to us, hey, you know what? If you take this other bus, it'll take you partway up the mountain, then you walk a few blocks, you get on this other bus that transfers to this other stop, you walk another few blocks, you can get to this taxi station, the taxi can take you there, and you'll get halfway through the show, but we'll still have your food and stuff ready for you. And I thought, we're in a foreign country. This is a lot of transition points. There's a lot of opportunities for things to go wrong. I'm not sure that's our best option anymore. And he also offered to give us a refund if we want. We decide that the guy who works at the hotel knows our situation, and he probably knows what's best for us. So to make it better, we ask him. And he says, actually, since it's the off season, there's a better show going on down the street called Celtic Nights. And normally you wouldn't be able to get tickets, but since it's off season, you would be able to get tickets last minute. And he's like, I also recommend you go to this other bar before, and then you finish at this place called The Church. It's an old medieval church converted into a bar restaurant. And I think he said that Arthur Guinness got married there. And I'm like, what? I didn't even know that thing existed. So sure enough, we go to this show, Celtic Nights, and it's great. We have a blast. We go to this medieval church, and we're having a blast again. And we're on cloud nine. We're like, we are just really in sync with the universe right now. God, creator, source, because everything that's created is good. And really it's our own ignorance that makes our negative judgments. And when we ask, how can we make it better, we're working with evolution rather than against it. And, you know, I heard Jordan Peterson recently, and he said, you know, when you think, it's like a prayer. It takes humility to think. You don't have the answer, that's why you're thinking. But that's almost like asking for a divine revelation. And maybe it comes to you. And so thinking is really like a prayer, but without the religious language. You know, and I thought, you know, there is something very spiritual when you ask yourself, what's good, what can be learned, how can you make it better? You're trying to see things through a God's eye view. Come on. So we're there, and I said to my wife, I said, we're really in sync right now. We're not leaving this bar tonight, this church, until I get a sign. So she's like, okay, and I'm like, I'm so sure I'm going to get it. So anyway, I work at this fitness studio and a medical clinic, and there's this song that always plays. I think it's called Punga or something like that. I've never heard it anywhere else. It's almost like saxophone and stuff. It's a really kind of funny song. And we kind of made it our anthem there because for some reason they just keep playing it and nobody's ever heard of this song. This church is playing a lot of like modern music. All of a sudden they start playing this song that's like the anthem of where I work. And it's almost like it was a mistake because they took it off halfway through. And I was like, that's my sign. It's time to go back to work. Anyways, it's all about what's good about this, what can be learned, how can I make it better. This is how we navigate through life and the human mysteries. It's simple, it's repeatable, and it's powerful. And you can do it for everything, and you can make it a game. You can go around in a circle and everyone can answer. You can do I go, you go, I go, you go. And what's the alternative?